So Earl, 1986, over 30 years ago. Can you believe it? 30 years ago that I walked into your office as just a kid off the farm, basically trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And you took the time to visit with me, and I grew up in Minnesota, so I didn't know
You were Warren, Minnesota.
Warren, Minnesota, that's right, that's right. So I didn't know the Strinden name like North Dakotans did. If I did, I might have been more intimidated walking into your office that day. But you took a chance on me, just this kid, and I didn't know at that point what a big influence and mentor you were going to be for me, and you definitely believed in me and set me up for success by being such a great mentor to me.
Well, thank you. Well, I tell you what, you did a wonderful job for us, and I was looking for something when we were hiring and putting young people on the staff, and you may remember some of your colleagues.
Yes.
Julie Liffrig
Yes.
was one, and Dana Bone
Yes.
was another, and Stacy Hoffman was another.
Oh, yes.
And part of the reason that I wanted to have students hired on is because I thought they would not have acquired any bad habits. And it was an opportunity to bring them into the organization, and oh my goodness, was it successful. And DeAnna, I tell you, the work you did for the Alumni Association and then later on the foundation is truly remarkable and something you can be very proud of.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And that has a lot to do with lessons I learned from you, and a couple of those lessons I know that you taught that you didn't even know you were teaching, but you never asked us to do anything that you wouldn't do yourself, ever. You were out there showing an example. You'd be moving tables and chairs. I think that was my first alumni days, that spring in '87. And we walked into the room, you and I did, and you're like, "Don't like this setup, let's move." And you were moving tables and chairs an hour before we had people coming in. But you never asked us to do what you wouldn't do. You weren't just the CEO, you were a teammate of ours. And that was a great lesson for me to learn early on.
Part of the thinking on it, number one, we didn't have, to start with, we didn't have resources.
Right.
We had to all pitch in.
Yes.
And so it was rather developing that type of a work philosophy. I take a part of it back from my experience in the Marine Corps. We're in the Marine Corps, everyone is first and foremost a rifleman.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when something needs to be done, you all pitch together. But there was something else here. Some of those that were working in the records, as an example, and they would see names, but they wouldn't ever get to meet these names. So when we would have alumni days and we would have our gatherings where the alumni would come back, it really added much for the staff members to be able to meet and visit.
Yes.
And there was a tremendous esprit de corps.
Yes.
There
was.
There was. Great.
There was.
And you were very much a part of that, and I thank you.
Well, thank you. Another Alumni Days story I remember, and you, I think you taught me presence at a podium too, and how you relate to an audience, but especially how you ad-lib. Do you remember the theme we had? We were going to bring out Lefse for our opening Alumni Days dinner. Do you remember this? And we had it shipped in, and it was frozen, of course, but the chef at UND, they were going to have it all ready, and we were going to have this big announcement, and we were going to carry it out. And so you told me to go check on the Lefse, and I went back to the kitchen, and it was still frozen. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And so you were getting ready for your announcement, so you had to stretch out the announcement, and we are unthawing the lefse on the oven and the stove. And so that was a good lesson in how you just kind of ad-lib and carry forward.
We were thinking of how do we really, many of these folks, when they were growing up, you know, and the lefse would be something that they would have in their homes.
Yes.
So got the idea this would be something that
I think it was the first and last time we tried serving lefse.
yeah.
At one of our events, anyway.
Well, I must just say the staff, I'm sure many of the staff were thinking now, what is he going to throw in there at the last minute?
We did. I did learn flexibility from you too, because there was always something new coming around the corner.
We had a great time, and the most important thing is that we, I think, fulfilled our missions. Mm-hmm. It was to build a greater and better University
Absolutely.
of North Dakota. Mm-hmm. It was to make others feel important.
Mm-hmm.
And about the role they had played, and to be unselfish
Yes.
in
Yes.
paying attention to others.
Mm-hmm.
So those were wonderful times, and you know, some of our programs became so successful that it created another problem. When the alumni would come back for our alumni days, they started coming earlier and
Yes.
earlier.
And staying later and later.
And staying later and later. So
That's right.
It was a wonderful problem to have.
Yes.
But I think back of the wonderful relationships.
Yeah. Yes.
And it was always for the staff, you and the others, not to use the individual members of our alumni family to make ourselves feel
Right.
important,
Right.
but to use ourselves to make these individuals feel important.
Yes.
And I think we pretty well accomplished that.
I think we did. And that was something else I learned from you. I don't know of anybody who did it better. You making people feel important. You are so good at that. And
Well,
talking to alumni and donors and friends, like they were the only person in the room and how they were changing lives. And I still learn from that and use that. You were so excellent. And I'll never be as good as you are in remembering names. Just like we were talking earlier, you can remember names like nobody I've seen. And in fact, I was on a donor visit this last week, Earl, and somebody talked about, remember the first National Alumni Leadership Council we had? That
Yes.
meeting we had, and we had like 200 people back.
Yes.
And the person I was talking to said, I think Earl went around the room and said something about each of those individuals sitting there, because you made a room of 200 people feel like they were the only one there, because you can make people feel good.
Yes, well, I would like to say I could still do that, but I can't.
You'd be pretty close, I
Because
think.
all of a sudden, when you get to be the age I'm at now, you can't do that. I can't do it anyway. But no, we had such wonderful folks, and
Yes.
you know, the alumni of this university, they're special.
They are.
They're special. They have a deep appreciation. And that, I think, is part of a tradition that we can be so proud of. The first public university founded in the Dakota Territory.
Yes.
6 years before North Dakota became a state.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the 1890s, when they didn't appropriate any money to keep the university going, just enough to maintain the very few buildings, and the alumni came through with their with contributions to keep the university from closing.
Yes.
And that became a strength for the future. That became a part of a tradition that to this day the alumni can be very proud of.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. And it's continued to grow, and you having the foresight to create a foundation that would make this organization grow for the benefit of the university, That was so important to what we can do for students today. You always looking forward and being that visionary and saying, this is what we need to do for our students.
Well, but I know you know, I want everyone else to know it was always a team effort. Those that were unselfishly giving of their extra time and putting extra effort in as members of the staff, you and the others, all what made this happen. So we've got a great and proud history.
We do.
Of this university, and when I think of some of the reunions we had, and I just looking up in the wall there, and I see the Camp Depression.
Yes.
And that day when we had a reunion for the Camp Depression, I don't think there was a dry eye in the audience at noon at that luncheon.
Yep. I agree.
As they spoke to what the University of North Dakota meant for them, what doors it opened, and what it provided them for a life of future of service and dedication for the benefit of others. So, hey, so many wonderful memories.
There is, and I love how passionate you still are for this organization and the university, and that's something else you taught me. If you're going to do something, do it with passion, and you've got to believe in what you're doing. And I know you did and still do, and I do, that what we're doing is changing lives for students, because we've heard it from alumni, just like you're saying, those Camp Depression men, and how this place changed their lives. It's changed my life. You've changed my life. Yeah. And I appreciate that.
Well, it was, you were a wonderful member of the team, and I commend you for the way you're continuing to build for a better university for future generations that will find their way to this campus. So, but we think back of so many of the folks that we got to know, and we were blessed.
Yes.
Because they added much to our lives, and they added much to the success of the University of North Dakota.
Yes.
So these are wonderful memories.
Who believed in you, Earl, when you started out? Have you thought about that? I've talked about you believed in me, but who believed in you along your life journey?
Well, I was in the hardware business, and there was a need to make a change. And so I was thinking of what would I do for the future. But I had a family and a number of children, and I served in the legislature, elected in 1966. I've been on the city council. I'm not saying that to be in any way bragging at all, but it was just that I had a strong attachment. And I was serving in the legislature with Grace Stone, Lloyd Stone's wife. And Lloyd was getting ready where he wanted to retire, and so just out of, it seemed like thin air, he just asked me if I would want to become the new executive vice president of the Alumni Association. We didn't have a foundation.
Right.
And doggone it, I wanted to stay in Grand Forks. I wanted to stay in North Dakota. And so I accepted that offer. And, and I appreciate very much the confidence they had in me, and that Lloyd asked me to come in and prepare to be the new executive when he retired. So that's the way that happened.
Yeah, yeah. So that was, you said 1966, that was just over 50 years ago. That's... Yeah.
Well, I went into the legislature
in 66?
My first session was 67.
67, okay.
And so it was probably getting on towards, about 1971.
Oh, that you came,
when
okay.
They asked me to join, and so...
and so your journey began.
Well, for me, it was a wonderful opportunity. And I never lost my appreciation to Lloyd and Grace for giving me that
Yes.
opportunity.
Yeah. They were wonderful people. I'm glad I had the opportunity to meet them and what they started here at the university too. It's
And then the foundation, that came along a little later. When I first suggested forming a foundation, why, it was met with some skepticism by the board of the Alumni Association, thinking that we already had this taken care of and wouldn't need it. But the foundation was very important because that allowed us to get into some of the programs that are very successful. Charitable Remainder Unit Trust, gifts
Yes, yeah.
estate, all kinds of things that became very important. So we did form the foundation, and I'm proud to say that within a relatively short period of time, it became the largest foundation in several states.
yeah.
And the only one larger was the University of Minnesota Foundation, but we were larger than any of the foundations in South Dakota. We were larger than the foundations in Montana. We were larger than the foundations in Nebraska, and so. But it was, as you well know now, and knew then, these programs for planning become very important.
Yes, they do.
And
Yes, they do. And now that endowment portfolio is closing in on $250 million.
isn't that wonderful?
Isn't that wonderful? And you started with less than $1 million, or you maybe some have even said less than zero. We started that with.
Yes, we were in the hole.
Yes.
And because the Alumni Association was partly funded at that early years, partly funded by student fees.
Oh, I
Oh,
did
yes.
not remember that. Oh.
And by golly, that wasn't going to last. We had to become self-sufficient.
Yes, yes.
And then the Alumni Association, different from most schools, and this was wonderful. The Alumni Association, when it was formed, was a separate. It was not a branch of the University of North Dakota. A separate standalone entity, nonprofit entity. And that too became a real strength for us.
Yes, it did.
So not that the administration of the university would do us any harm, but the truth is that many on the university staff and within the university did not really understand how important it is to build relationships. And it is the building of relationships
It is.
that makes a difference.
That it is. That it is. Well, you had a number of sayings that, leaving the wood pile higher. One of my favorite, though, I remember I made sweatshirts for the team at homecoming, and it was running a marathon at 100-yard dash pace or something like that. That's kind of the way you taught us to do that you just keep going. And like you said, you made alumni and others feel good about that.
Well, we thanks to you and the others that were so dedicated and enthusiastic.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we really stressed was sincerity.
Yes. Yes.
Always to be sincere, and to make others feel good.
Absolutely.
So I like to think that along the way, we just did a lot of things right.
I think so, and you were a great mentor in that. So I thank you for these 30 years that we've been together, and thank you for making such a difference in my life, along
Well,
with many
I
others.
saw in you, back then, I had in my mind what I wanted the staff to bring to the organization for the success. And I saw in you what would be important in building that genuine relationship where individuals would want to be part and be involved in the building of a bigger and greater University of North Dakota. And by golly, I'll tell you what, what you've accomplished points that my judgment was pretty good. It was very good.
I'm glad. I'm glad. Thanks for taking a chance on me.
Well, you've proven yourself so many ways and so many times, and thank you for that, because we started something that we thought was going to be very important for future generations, and as also to be important for those who were there,
Yes.
so that they would know that they were part of something very special. And you fulfilled that, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Earl.